Hello, everyone. Hi, Bharati. Hi,
Hello.
Akshay.
Hello, hello.
Today we are in a very special live stream with a very special guest. And yeah, Akshay will be sharing a lot of amazing things today. But before that, we would like to just wait 1 or 2 minutes before people come and yeah, so that more people can join the live. And while we wait, Bharati, you want to tell us how you met Akshay and a little bit about your relationship?
Yes, actually, very interesting. I didn't know about him, about you, Akshay, and you just appeared in the darkness retreats, and you signed up. And then during that time, I got to understand what is your background, especially after your retreat when you started to share your story, and I was like, wow. And I was very, very touched by your story. And I personally always very touched by people who are authentic and honest, because I feel there's always so much fake in the world. So that is what I feel like, very nice and relieved about people who are just clear. And that is what I felt. And I felt you turned that pain you experience in your life into a beautiful blessing for people. And you turned that negativity in a way, not just for you in your way to come out of some suffering, but also to inspire souls.
Yeah.
And that is how I met Akshay.
Yes, that's very interesting. I heard a lot about when I was in the dark. Bharati was also telling me, always telling me about your stories, about how you did so many things. So I think we can get started now. So let me first introduce Akshay. Akshay is ex. I don't know if you call like this, like U.S. Marine.
In the Marines, we always say once a Marine, always a Marine. So Marine Corps veteran.
Okay, Marine Corps veteran. He's also an author of the book Fearvana, which I really recommend, and the link is in the description below. He's also joined Bharati in the Darkness Retreat for 21 days, if I'm not
7 days, but I am planning. I'm planning a longer one soon, Bharati.
He did the 7 days, and basically, I think he's from what I've heard and from what I've read, his motto is to always face fears, right? So I think there was this period in his life where he was doing everything that made him fear, from darkness retreats, from ultra marathon. I don't know, ultra. Is it called like ultra marathon?
Ultra marathons, yeah. So 50 miles, 100 kilometers, 80 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like if I like run 5 kilometers, I'm already dead.
Me after 3 kilometers.
yes. Coming up the stairs now with the corona thing, I'm already old. So yeah, Akshay is a very special soul that I've learned so much from the things he wrote. I'm subscribed to your newsletter, and also from your stories, like really inspired me so much. And also he got a very nice commentary from Dalai Lama, which I think it's very special.
It was an honor.
And yeah, so would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Like, yes.
Sure. Yeah, I can share a little bit about my journey to that led to Fearvana. When I moved around a lot, born in India, when I moved to the US at 13, soon after moving, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol. I used to cut myself, burn myself, and was just in a very dark place. And I lost 2 friends to that lifestyle and was kind of heading down there myself. Thankfully, I got out. I decided to join the Marines, and that's when I started to find the beauty in fear, the beauty in adversity, the beauty in struggle, in engaging that, because obviously Marine training was hard. And then from there, like you said, I started exploring other ways. So I went mountain climbing in the Himalayas. I went scuba diving, skydiving, ice climbing, ice diving. I mean, you name it, kind of nature became my playground to explore my fears, going cave diving as well into tight spaces. And then in 2007, I was deployed to Iraq, where I was an infantry Marine. And one of my jobs out there was to walk in front of our vehicles looking for bombs before they could be used to kill me and my fellow Marines. So you learn how to navigate fear, how to navigate adversity.
Wait a moment. Sure. I heard that on another. I have to say that I heard you on another podcast talking about that too. And just to make that clear, there was no other device going in front to checking if there are bombs. They used a human device. Is that real?
So in the sense that our goal was like if we got into a danger zone, like let's say a bridge where bombs could be planted on the side, me and one other Marine would walk to the side of the bridge to look for it first. And if we found something, then we called the what's called EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, to come take care of it. But I mean, somebody had to find it first, right? So,
Oh my gosh.
but it was, it was.
How did you feel? How did you feel doing that? What kind of mind state you were doing that? I mean, you were facing death every day there.
Not as scared as one might think, because I went out there with a very interesting mindset. Before I even left, I had lost a very close friend of mine in the war, and I had always struggled with the guilt that I wasn't there with him. Because we were close friends. We volunteered to go to war together every chance we could. And one summer while I was out in India, he ended up finding a unit to go with, and he got promoted and he got killed. So I always struggled with the guilt that I didn't go with him, and I felt like I should have been where he was sitting. So when I actually got my time to go to Iraq, I was ready. I mean, if I had to die, so be it. I was not very scared of death, and that's a problem. I think fear of death is actually a beautiful thing, and we're we're confronting that right now, and that's why I was not as scared. If it came, I was ready for it. I would rather have it been me than anybody else. So
that's very interesting. And you now have a healthy fear of death now?
Absolutely. Today I do. Today I am scared of dying, because the fear of death kind of awakens a greater meaning, a greater appreciation for life. Actually, right on my living room, I have a poster that says "You will die soon." So I remind myself of my mortality. It's intense. It's not a subtle
thing. I
thing.
wouldn't put that in my living room, but maybe I would. I don't know. It's interesting.
Confronting our mortality has a lot of power. So
Yes.
it makes me stay present to that, and we're obviously seeing that in today's time.
So talking about mortality, how do you see this mortality situation that we are all facing together now?
Yeah.
About the corona, about all this, how do you see this fear, and what do you see where we're going, what we can do to go through this special moment, not special, but this moment.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point about not being special, ultimately every moment is just a moment. There's an isness to thing. There's no bad or good. We assign meanings to it that make it bad or good. Now, this doesn't mean it's not hard. When we lose people we love, when we're seeing people in our human family dying, we're seeing people struggling economically. I have friends who have lost jobs. Their businesses that they've worked for 15 years are collapsing, and it is hard. It's heartbreaking to see that. So there's no doubt there is deep struggle going going on right now for a lot of people collectively across the globe in our collective human family. So let's start by we can talk more about fears around that in general, but I will start by kind of the first part you brought up around mortality. When we're looking at confronting the potential death of, not just potential death. Some of us have obviously lost people we know potentially already in what's happening. There's no easy way out of it, and there's nothing you can do to get out of that. Like the fundamental problem in the human condition that I've come to learn through my life experience and research in psychology, spirituality, neuroscience is that we are always looking for the quickest path out of pain. Like somebody came to me once and asked me, okay, what if somebody's going through this situation, divorce, or this situation, sort of give me specific situation. How would you address it? I said, separate from the specific situation, the fundamental problem is we are looking for the easiest path out of pain. And it's understandable because pain is uncomfortable. That's the nature of pain. But so obviously we're looking for the quickest path out of it. And so if you look at how we're addressing this situation, for example, even with the quarantine, every article I've read around is how do we escape the boredom? How do we escape the stillness? I mean, in the darkness, you have to be still. You have nowhere to go.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
But everything we are trying to do now is escaping the challenge of having to confront ourselves. Now, death is obviously hard, especially if you lose somebody you love. There's no doubt. There's going to be a grieving. If you have fear around losing somebody you love, like because let's say they're in a different country, like my parents are in India right now. They are in that age group of, where the greatest threat from the coronavirus. They're 60, my dad's 64, 65. And there's nothing I can do to control it. There's nothing I can do. So when we have fears around it, I always like to say that fear is not the enemy of love. Fear is an expression of love. Now, it's often framed as the opposite. People say there's fear and there's love, as if they're two opposites, but they're not. That they're not opposites. They're both two sides of the same coin. And so when you have fear around it, turn that fear into an expression of love. So let's say I can't go to India right now, even if I wanted to, right? The travel bans, all that kind of stuff. My parents are in lockdown in their house. But if there's fear around that, I can express my love. I can call them more than I was. I can let them know I love them. Let them know I appreciate them. Thank them for everything they've done for me. You know, anything we can do. Now, it doesn't change the fact that there might still be fear. That fear might not go away. And that's okay, though. The goal here is not to eliminate these emotions. They're not bad emotions. That's the problem. We live in a world that demonizes fear, stress, anxiety. We think of these things as bad, as negative. They're not bad or negative. They just are. And we can make anything work for us. That's why I spent a whole lot of my life confronting fear. And so when it comes to mortality, you know, the one of the most powerful quotes about losing people and this is something to stay present to. I mean, if you've just lost somebody, it's harder to stay present to this. I understand there's a grieving process, and God knows I get it. Like I mentioned, I lost a friend in the war. I've lost 2 junior Marines to suicide. They killed themselves after the war. I've lost friends to drug addiction. And so I know, you know, death, having confronted it outside and people I love, and having been on the edge of it in many contexts myself. In fact, when I came back from the war, just to kind of end that story, but it'll give it some context, I struggled with alcoholism, with depression. I was with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I got out of that. That's what led me to Fearvana. Does the audio still? Okay, I can't hear y'all.
No, because I muted my mic
okay.
It didn't disturb you.
I wasn't sure if I was just talking, nobody was hearing. Okay. So yeah, let me go on. You know, so I was in a dark place, and coming out of that, help me reframe my guilt, help me reframe my struggle. So the point I'm making is that I've confronted loss, and when I was dealing with my guilt around the fact that I felt like I should have died instead of my friend, I eventually read this book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And one of the quotes when it comes to mortality that he says is, "The dead depend on us for their redemption and their immortality." I'll repeat that because I think it's very, very powerful. The dead depend on us for their redemption and their immortality. Now, this is not something to confront, especially if you've just lost somebody. There's a grieving process. There's no doubt. And the goal is not to get out of that grief. You know, celebrate a person's life. One can do all of that. The grief is going to be there, but remember that it's on you to honor their death. Like now, when I look at it, you know, I mentioned I have a picture that says "You will die soon," and under that picture is the tombstone of my friend. So it's not just a random graveyard; it's a tombstone of my friend who I lost in the war. So it's intense. It reminds me of that, and I look at that because I don't have the right now to waste my life away drinking as much as. I mean, I was drinking a bottle of vodka a day. You know, so I don't have the right to waste that. It's on me to honor his death, to honor this life I've been gifted.
And, you know, I see a lot of people joining us in the Darkness Retreats, also people around me, where I feel many people, as you said, want to escape. And I also absolutely understand that. And we see that in the darkness when people all of a sudden feel, oh my gosh, things come up. Yeah. Then they want to go out, or the mind finds a reason why to go out immediately, right? So, and I mean, I was also living in India for many years, and there was a time I did sadhana. For 10 years I did sadhana, and sometimes between 10 and 14 hours sitting and doing meditation. So I know that energy of I want to run away, and I know what the mind creates. Everything, it creates so much, and to be with the feeling, to be present, is what I think is the only way to really be there, because you can suppress with drinking, you can suppress with making yourself happy with some, I don't know, with sex, drugs, rock and roll, I don't know what.
With everything, right? Yeah.
But at the end it comes back to you. And actually it's what I really was thinking when I came back from India, when I started the Darkness Retreats, I was thinking, almost everybody gets that already, and they come to the Darkness Retreat and get enlightened experiences. And I was very, very surprised that that many people had such a hard time to be with themselves. And then I remembered, hey, wait a moment, Bharati, it was difficult for you too. A minimum of 5-6 years you struggled with that too. So I actually found it as a new normal for me to be with whatever it is, but even now it's not easy. It's never easy, but it's like you said, you accept the challenge. And I think that is a very important clue here. It's not about getting easy.
Yeah.
It's not about, getting it in the most softest way.
Yeah.
And I also think that is very, very important in many ways. It's not just of losing somebody who's dying of corona, but also how to handle our fears and how to handle our situation, because I see a lot of people who are really frozen in that situation. I know some friends who have businesses who are completely frozen, and I'm also in a very difficult situation right now because we are locked down and we have high costs running, but we come up with new ideas and we're very busy. We're not stopping being busy, but I see people getting really shocked, and in that shock you cannot move or starting drinking or so we have to move. So maybe, and that reminds me of you moving also. You're doing a lot of sports. So I see some connection in that moving, moving your mind, moving your body, moving your mind, right?
Absolutely.
Can you tell about that too?
Sure. So on a basic level, obviously there's value in meditation. In exercise is one of the best things you can do for your brain. One neuroscientist calls it miracle growth for the brain. So what it does for your synaptic connections. But even in terms of the fear, most of us are not trained in the experience of fear. So we react to fear, and not just fear, any emotion, anger or anything. We react to it as opposed to responding to it. But there's a space between the emotion and who we are, that higher self, the divine self, whoever you want to call it, the conscious self. There's a space between the emotion and how we react to the emotion, how we respond to it consciously. So I can have fear and either just react and panic, go into that fight or flight, or I can notice the fear and choose what I want to do with the fear. Most of the things I do terrify me. Even writing a book on fear was scary because I thought, what if it's garbage? What if people hate it? What if I get a 1-star review on Amazon? So the point is, how do you engage the fear? I always like to say fear propels you to prepare. If you engage the fear, fear propels you to prepare. So right now, Bharati, you were talking about your business. People are struggling. So engage the fear. What am I scared of? What's the worst case scenario? How do I prepare for that worst case scenario? Spend some time writing this down, going into detail. And it's okay to be scared. The fear is an understandable fear. That's one part is don't demonize it. This is actually at a higher level. Most people will say things like, don't be scared, be fearless. Overcome your fear. That's a
think positive.
Exactly.
You have to think positive. Right now it makes me very aggressive. If somebody says think positive, I say, no, I want to be with what is right now. Don't tell me I should not feel it.
Exactly. And we do that all the time with so many emotions. Don't be angry, don't worry, don't be scared. We say don't all the time. And many times people saying it from a place of love, right? We'll tell somebody we love, don't worry. But if you're worried, worry. It's okay. Feel it. Engage it, understand it, go deeper into it. And with that, you can now come up with solutions. So another very simple technique that's actually very powerful is turning obstacles into questions, turning barriers into questions. So because what happens is when you have a barrier, it becomes like a wall, but a question becomes like a door. So a very simple example of this is I was working with this one kid who didn't have money to go to college. So all he would say is I don't have money to go to college. There's no way, I don't have money. So now that's a wall. But if you turn it into a question, you can now say, how can I make money to go to college? Are there scholarships? Who do I have to become to be worthy of their scholarships? How can I apply for those scholarships? Now you're looking for solutions. And again, this doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There's no easy. So the big problem is, and I'm repeating this point intentionally, is don't look for easy, because easy is not going to happen. One way or the other, we are going to suffer in life. We're going to struggle. And I always like to say that if you don't seek out a worthy struggle, struggle will find you anyway. So you might as well pursue a worthy struggle, a meaningful challenge, because otherwise you're going to suffer anyway. So seek out the worthy one.
So true. Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly for you, like Bharati said, I know you answered this a little bit, but I wanted to know a little bit more about your own personal experience on how you're dealing with this. For example, right now there's in situations where where you don't know what's going to happen, in situations where there's a lot of uncertainty and you don't have an idea. And sometimes the idea of not having an idea brings anxiety, brings fear. And in these situations where you cannot, let's say, find any intellectual solution, you cannot find any mental solutions, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. No, great question. So this whole situation with the coronavirus has shattered our sense of control over the world, right? Before this, we lived in relative normalcy. We were comfortable in our reality that the world isn't going to collapse. And now we have no idea. And like you said, that uncertainty causes anxiety. And it reminds me of many of the expeditions I do. So when I ski across Greenland, when I climb mountains in the Himalayas, you don't know. I mean, you can kind of with the best of your ability, but the next day a giant storm could hit. So when I'll give you the story and I'll give you break the meaning out of the story. When I spent a month dragging a 190-pound sled for 350 miles across Greenland in minus 40 degrees. And for 5 days, we were stuck in brutal storms out there, brutal storms. The tent sounds like inside of a washing machine. And the following year, a British explorer was killed in one of these storms. So very intense storms. And you don't know when that storm could hit. Like one day we were skiing and it just went from like mild to crazy intense bad storm, and we set up our tent. So the point of this is in these environments, you don't control your world. But because you don't control your world, you are forced to exercise the muscle of control to gain a sense of control over your world. And what I mean by that is in these environments, when the storm hit, now I have to set up my tent, right? Now it's on me to set up my tent the right way. So I'm making sure I set up my tent. I dig it deep enough. I put it the right way so it doesn't blow off in the storm. I make sure I bring the stuff I need into my tent. I make sure I set up my stove the right way. So I'm forced to exercise control over my little world in front of me because I have so little control over the outside world. And the same principles. That's why right now I can be very calm and stable in this because I've trained in it. So I understand if you haven't trained in it, it can be very daunting because again, otherwise, like normally, like if the world with that, like non-coronavirus happenings, when the life is normal, I don't have to exercise control. I can drive through. I can, I'm staying in the lanes. I know you basically know the person next to you is not going to swerve out of the lane and crash into you. So you don't think about it because there's order to your world. With that order shattered, the best you can do is regain control and exercise the control over the 6 inches in front of you, the little part in front of you. So you gather the intel, you gather the data, right? Now, you don't want to delve down the rabbit hole of the news. We all know that you can get sucked down the Facebook rabbit hole, reading the news over and over again, but gather enough intel to know what's up, to know what's going on in your environment, wherever you are. And then exercise control over the things you can't control because you can't do anything else. And there's actually a tremendous beauty in it. There's a tremendous piece the reason why I go into these environments is because I have so little control over them. And by exercising the muscle of control, you're actually gaining more control over the world than you think. Now, most of us are not familiar to it. That's why it's going to seem daunting and anxious and scary. But I'll tell you from having experienced these going to war, skiing across ice caps. I was just in Norway 2 months ago on a 5-day expedition, dragging a sled again, same thing like I did in Greenland. And the reason I go into these environments, or there's a simplicity in these environments. Ironically, even in war, I've often found that I had a greater sense of peace while at war, because life is very simple when all you have to worry about is living and dying, the men and the mission, the one day in front of you. You're not worried about the million other things. And because you can't control that anyway. Ultimately in life, there are only 2 things you can control: your actions or your attitude. That's it, right? And more than likely some degree of both, especially if you have the freedom to exercise some degree of both. So always be looking at, what can I control here? If I gather the intel, I can prepare for the worst. So fear propels you to prepare, engage the fear, prepare accordingly, like we talked about, and then exercise control over the parts of your world that you have control over. And this doesn't mean if you're untrained in it, this is not to say the anxiety is going to go away, right? Especially if you're untrained. But the reason I have no anxiety is because I have trained in it. And I'm not saying this in a sort of an egotistical way. It's just an experience. I've had the life experience. So my brain does not respond with anxiety. So acknowledging the anxiety, understanding that, look, I understand that this is okay. Feel what we feel, coming back to that emotions. Like, don't try to fight it. Don't try to resist it. Don't try to make it go away. Don't try to get on the other side of it. Accept it. Be with it. Understand it. Pause on it. And that's not easy, but in time, and actually a key point there is also separating your self-identity from that emotion. This is essential too, because what happens is people often say things like, I've worked with people with mental health issues. They'll say things like, I am depressed. I have depression. And that becomes their self-identity. Same thing with me for a long time. I was an alcoholic. I have PTSD. Instead of saying, look, my brain is going through symptoms of post-traumatic stress. My brain is going through symptoms of anxiety. My brain is going through symptoms of depression. But that's not me. That's not who I am. Most neuroscience and spirituality have both shown we don't control what happens in our brain. Like right now, if I'm sitting in my room and somebody comes into this room with a gun, my brain is going to react with fear. I'm not choosing to feel fear. My brain is going to react with fear because it's saying this thing could kill me. So right now, our brain is saying, look, there's uncertainty, so I'm going to be anxious. But look, that's not who I am. So disassociating your self-identity from that emotion and acknowledging that, look, you can create something out of this, you can be more. So the question then becomes, who do you want to create? And ask yourself that question.
I like that what you're saying, and there's one thing I also see in a lot of people, either though they don't see any news at all. I had some people who wanted to come to the darkness retreat, and then they all of a sudden they call us, oh, I wanted to come, and I don't know how that happened. The boundary is closed, and I cannot come from Switzerland to Germany. And we're like, what? You never see the news? Yeah, I know. I never want to get in touch with negative energies. And I was like, what? And that is exactly, not the way to go. You have to be realistic about what things are. And so what I think, so I like what you said, like see it and feel it, what it works with you, and then go distance, or even with a bank account. I also like what you said with that. I had a new mantra today. I'm not my bank account. I'm not my bank account. And when the fear is gone, all of a sudden I have new ideas, and because the fear is like kind of paralyzing. I experience that if I'm in the fear, I'm like, whoa, everything I try to do is very crampy, how you say in English. It's like, wow, this place of work. Once I can laugh about that, or I can move, and it's very interesting. I mean, I'm not a runner like you, and especially after 2 kids, I got a little couch potato, but still we can go in the forest. I hope that still they keep it up, because still we can go jogging, and I started to do that now, and I really feel different. Even if it's just a half an hour I'm running, I feel like, even though I don't have solutions, that is very interesting, because I think another idea is that we have to find solutions every time. And it's the same situation. I don't have any free solution, but somehow I feel good. And from that place, I can create better. So
absolutely.
So why are you doing?
Sorry, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
No. Yeah,
just a quick note I was saying was like, running doesn't solve my problems, but it gives me a better way to handle those problems.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
But one thing I have really an interesting question for you personally, Akshay, is because why are you doing this extreme sports? I mean, you could do running and enjoying. Why? What is that with the extreme that you go in that ultra marathon? And are you trying to also work with your feelings in another way, also in another extreme way, like you did with the alcohol just now? It's just a little question.
No, it's a great question. And for a long time, I was doing these things to run away from myself. So like when I mentioned I skied across Greenland for a month, this was before I hit that low moment in my life where I was on the verge of suicide from drinking and PTSD and depression.
So wait a moment, you were skiing 1 month
across Greenland. Yeah, like cross-country skiing for 350 miles, 550 kilometers. We dragging one month worth of food and supplies to survive in the ice cap. As such, so dragging a 190-pound sled with 32 days worth of food in minus 40 degrees, severe storm.
With how many people?
There were 6 of us on the team. 6 of us on the team.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I did that in 2012. Yeah, 2012. So you're dragging the sled, your supplies, it was, you're skiing for about 10, 12 plus hours a day, cross country skiing every single day. For 5 days, we were stuck in a storm out there, but I went out there essentially to run away from myself, to run away from my own demons. I hadn't confronted them. And eventually I did have to confront them. And that's when I got to a point where after 5-6 days of binge drinking, I was on the verge of suicide. I was about to go to my kitchen, pick up a knife and slit my wrists. So to your point and your question, I was doing a lot of these things to run away from myself, because even sometimes the positive things we do, like there's the things like drinking, drugs, but even like work and positive things can be just a way to run away from having to confront what's in here in our mind, our spirit, and our soul. But I still do these things now, but from doing them from a very different level of consciousness than running away. Now I'm going there to seek something more, because I believe you can only truly understand the humanity at the edges. Only when you go to the extremes, the edges, can you really appreciate and understand the who we are, the human potential. I mean, this is why, I mean, going into darkness for 7 days, you know, like half the people thought I was insane for doing that. You know? Like my friends were like, well, that's
many people think I'm insane and running a darkness retreat center.
I'm sure. Yeah. My friends are like, wait, you went and paid to go for like a holiday in darkness? Like that's insane. You're out of your mind. You know, but like exploring the edges of the human experience. And I don't just mean in suffering, even in play. And like, for example, like I'm only recently realized that I've only been put, like, there's a duality to life, right? There's a duality to all of it. There's lightness, there's light, there's darkness, there's suffering, there's joy, there's comfort, there's discomfort, there's your demons, your divinity. There's so many, there's all these dualities, right? The yin and yang, like Fearvana, fear and nirvana. And we often frame one side of the duality as negative. We think fear is bad, but stress is bad. But just like stress and recovery, you need stress just like you need recovery. If you do too much of one thing, if you're just relaxing, you're not going to grow. But if you're just suffering all the time, you're not going to grow either. You need the recovery. That's where your muscles get stronger, you know, not just physically, but psychologically and spiritually as well. So you need to go to the edges of the duality. And only recently have I kind of confronted that I've been pushing too far into the spaces of suffering. And while I'll still always do that, I'm exploring the other side of that duality and allowing myself to play more, to experience joy more, to experience ease more, right? But the duality is everything. And I think most of our lives, we live in the mundane. Most of our lives, most human beings live in, well, I can't say most, some people are living in pretty horrific conditions of the human experience, but in let's say if you're not in war zones and if you're in a civilized environment, like where you're not in war, we spend most of our lives in mundane. And that, you're missing out on the human experience. Not only that, you can only grow when you go onto the edges. You can only grow through greater suffering. Like the awakenings happen on the struggle, right? Like if you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something you've never done before. Right. And that means being uncomfortable. That means taking a risk. That means being scared. And the greater the suffering, the greater the struggle, the greater the rewards on the other side of it. So I explore the edges because to me, that's the only way that's the only place to go. I mean, there's the only way to experience the beauty of the human condition.
Wow. I really have to say, on a spiritual side, I went to that edge too. I mean, staying in an ashram for 10 years, meditating so long, and then later on doing different things as well. And now, but for me, that was the kind of thing for me personally. Now I really get your words, and it's because I see many people who are very difficult time to go out of their comfort zone. A very difficult time, and they just go to that level and don't step up or don't work on themselves, and I think this has a lot to do with that right now. So maybe that crisis could be a chance also for many of us to come up to a new skill, new level, new understanding,
absolutely,
new growing, right?
Suffering brings that out. I mean, I always say, you know, like in war, for example, you'll see the very worst of humanity. People do awful, horrible things, but you also see the very best. You see people jumping on grenades to save somebody else, sacrificing their lives for another human being. Moments of great adversity, moments of crisis, moments of suffering, they bring out the best and the worst in humanity. That pushes us to the edges, and then we get to see what shows up. You know, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about in a concentration camp, he saw people who were, you know, they were tortured, suffering, cold, starving, and they would give away their last piece of bread to somebody who needed it more than them. I mean, the level of courage, of sacrifice, of humanity, of love to do that is unfathomable. Now, nobody would want this coronavirus to happen. Nobody would want somebody to be in a concentration camp. Nobody wants people to suffer like that. But when only in those edges can you see love shine at the highest level like that, right? Like only at the very edges. So, you know, one psychologist calls it altruism born of suffering. So when we are in this experience, we get to now test ourselves. We get to go explore the nobility of man, the nobility of the human beings that can only be explored in moments of struggle.
Yes.
And that's
we
the power.
talked about this on our last video, how these are the times that probably people are looking for God the most. Like they are searching for their inner, higher being or this universal energy. And that's the beauty of, a material disaster. You have the spiritual, people start to think differently and feel differently.
Yeah.
And so, what? Yes, you want to say something?
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. You know, it makes us question what really matters in a world that has given us pretty inaccurate, let's put it that way. Inaccurate is a nice word to put. Inaccurate understandings of what actually matters, right? Like we live in a world that tells us these things will make us happy. Go buy I mean, there's a term like retail therapy, because we think will make us happy. And we all know it doesn't, right? It gives us a temporary joy. But like when those masks are shed, and this is again why I push the edges, because it sheds those masks and you are forced to go within at a different level and to understand what truly matters. But that's the problem. I mean, we live in a world that feeds easy. We are always looking for the easy. I mean, we're instant gratification, right? We have our little phones here, constant. We can get everything we want in a minute. We live in a world that tells us when I get this thing, I'll be happy. When I get $1 million, when I get the house, when I get a car, I'll be happy. But the problem is we get there and we find there's still new problems. There'll always be problems in life.
Yes.
That thing is not going to make us happy. It's in the navigating the journey. It's in embracing the highs and the lows and recognizing that the journey itself is a destination, that it's not about seeking the end. It's about embracing the highs and the lows and the struggles and the joy throughout it all, that we find the purity of the human experience.
And,
Yes, that's so true.
That is very true. And one of the things why I was so touched meeting you was when I got to feel that with your experiences you really had also the experience of the oneness with people, and you really come from that place to want to help people. And that is in a time of a very egoistic place where we're living in, because there are people who are caring and there are people who are sharing, but there are people who not. And there are also people who are very, they're very judgmental about people who are not so much materialistic or don't,
Yeah.
And there's those people are worthy, those people are less. And you see in India, you see it a lot still.
Oh, absolutely.
People who are rich, then they pay a little bit to the cleaning people, and they treat them like
them like dirt. Yeah, they think of them as less. Yeah,
it's very bad. And now I did a live stream on Facebook. I do sometimes, and I'm chanting Hanuman Chalisa right now. And I did one live stream. I chanted for India one Hanuman Chalisa, and my favorite rickshaw driver came on. And the bus driver who drives my spiritual groups, like, he has a picture of my son and him on his profile picture now.
Oh,
so,
cool.
wow, and I feel like this is amazing.
Yeah.
They're friends, and I hope that this crisis will break some of this patterns down. That is not about that, what we build up, this person is high, this person is low, and we are all in this together. We are all connected, and that is, I hope that's a chance. I mean, my heart really goes out in this crisis for people who, I don't know what that is karmically, or I don't know why they're in the situation, but the poorest are now hit it the hardest. And they closed down the services for people who are living on the street in Germany. So that is very bad. So people met now privately and brought them food and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that is what you're talking about. And but you can only see that when you come out your own little world there, where it's just you, where you just expand. It's like, hey, no, we are in this together here. Hello, you are not alone. You never are.
Yeah. And that's like, again, crisis brings that out, right? Like right now, the coronavirus has shown that we are all in this together, right? I mean, like, it's like if you think that I can just live in my own little bubble and be selfish, let's say I go to the grocery store and everybody in that store decided not to wash their hands and they get coronavirus, I could get it, right? Like we're all in this together, and moments of adversity bring that out. Like being a Marine, that's why there's a camaraderie when you serve in the Marines, because we suffer together, we struggle together, and there's this brotherhood that forms, So moments of crisis bring out like the oneness. And it's the same thing whether I'm going to war within the Marines, whether I'm skiing across an ice cap. You feel not only connected to the people you're with, but to the land you're on. We're connected to the earth, to ourselves in a different way. And right now, like the coronavirus, again, nobody would have wanted it. I know a lot of people are suffering, but it is showing that we are separate from borders, separate from religion, from race, from nationality, that we're all in this together. If you don't look out for like what the actions I take can affect the people around me, and same thing, vice versa. The actions my neighbor takes can affect me, so we act as one. And that's, again, nobody would have wanted it, but the beauty of adversity is it brings that out.
Yes. I think just gonna quote something that a 10-year-old boy said, how we are now facing a collective karma. And it's a very, very special time for us to let go and release this collective karma. Not, like you said, not only as the earth, but I think as also small groups. Like now that we're all in quarantine, to not only face our own fears, but to face the fears and the things that is blocking us from the people that we're close to. Like the past struggles, the past karmas between me and everyone around me, from the earth. So I think it's not only about facing, like hearing now, I just feel like it's not only about facing our emotions, but facing the emotions together, not only mine, but from my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, because everything that is rising, and when it rises, it never rises for only one person. There's always something between two. So I think this is a very, very powerful moment for us to grow and to release a lot of negative collective karma. Like when I mean collective, in many like collective groups, like from bigger groups to smaller groups.
Yeah. No, I love that. Love that.
So particularly, if you could give some advice of what people could do, because I think one thing is to understand that, now understand that I should face my fears. But like now that most of the world is in quarantine, like small tips that people could do daily, or, like practical things that would, if you have any. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I touched on earlier is engage the fear, because fear propels you to prepare. So take some time to understand it, right? Like, what am I scared of? What's the worst case scenario? Write this down. Don't just like think it, right? Write this down. How can I prepare for it? So you're really engaging. Like a tangible example is when I wrote my book, I was terrified of writing a bad book. So I was like, okay, what am I scared of? Why am I scared? And as a result, I studied, how do I write a good book? So I studied from authors like Jack Canfield, Tim Ferriss. How do I write a better book? So I put that into action, right? So I engaged the fear and then translated it. So that's kind of one thing. And, now that we're in quarantine, this is where you kind of going back into the duality, right? The duality of, let's say, the struggle and the joy. Don't use this as, I would not recommend you run away from this. Use this as an opportunity to confront that stillness. It might not be a darkness retreat, but use this as an opportunity to go within, to spend some time. If you're stuck, like, again, I know we're in different contexts. Some people are, some people the range of struggle in this. Some people are sitting home very comfortable. It could, not that bad. Some people are losing jobs. So I get there's like sort of the range of the struggles around this. But if you're at home, you got more time. Don't use this as use this to go into those spaces that you've been running away from, that you've been doing everything you've been running away from. Because, like Carl Jung puts it beautifully. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So go there. And he also says this beautifully. He says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
Yes.
So go into the darkness within, and you will find something. And this is the duality. This doesn't mean you spend the whole time in the darkness. Also engage the other side of that, the light, the joy triggers. So find things. I don't know, if you're with family, play board games, go for exercise at home. It's not that hard. Like, there's no excuse for why you shouldn't be exercising. If you're at home, if you're physically able, you can be doing it even with a 5-foot space in your house. So exercise at home. I'm not saying don't watch movies. I'm not saying don't run away. Like, do things on both sides, but don't try to just avoid the darkness. Go into the darkness, go into the light. And use this as an opportunity to express that love. As I said, fear is not an enemy of love. Fear is an expression of love. So let's say you have a nanny that comes over and you can't pay her right now because, she can't come over right now because, we're in quarantine. Pay her anyway. Let's say you have a maid that comes over, pay them anyway. Like, do things that allow you to express love, to transform the fear into love. Like, the greatest thing you can do to transform any kind of struggle is to transcend that struggle in service of somebody else, in service of something greater than yourself. I always like to say that suffering is a training ground for self-transcendence. When you suffer, it offers you the opportunity to train in self-transcendence. So in a sort of concrete example, when I run, right, when I'm suffering, I have to rise above the suffering to keep moving forward. When you're 50 miles into a run, you are suffering. Your body, your mind, your spirit, everything is hurting. In order to take that next step, I have to transcend my pain to move forward in service of the mission. Suffering allows you to train in the experience of self-transcendence. So use this right now, because it's the best thing you can do, even on a selfish level. When you start serving others, it'll help you get out of your own stuff. It'll help you focus on something greater than you, and you'll get out of your own challenges. So use this as an opportunity to serve. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, even if you're at home, Send, like right now, what I'm doing is I'm texting a lot more people than I was before. I'm checking in. How are you? Sending an email to people that I might not have talked to in a couple of years. Hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you doing? And one person wrote to me, like I saw somebody post a live, and I just wrote to them saying, hey, nice work. I love what you shared. It meant so much to her, because people feel like, does somebody care about what I'm doing? So just check in. It means a lot to people. We're all ultimately going through stuff. We're all struggling with our demons. Let somebody know they're not alone. That's a beautiful thing, even if it's just a text. That makes a difference. So like transforming your struggle into a worthy struggle. Because like I said, you're going to struggle anyway. And here's a key thing to also remember is that before this thing happened, we were all struggling with something. After this thing happens, we will all struggle with something again. That's just the nature of life. And I'm not like trying to be morose about it. It's not a negative thing. It's a reality thing. And it's not a bad thing. It's like this, the nature, it's the reality. And struggle is beautiful. So use this opportunity that's been handed to you. Because here's the thing, before this happened, we were all looking for the easiest. We were struggling anyway, but we weren't forced into struggle in the way that we are now, right? So now that this has been pushed on us, use this to train. Use this to train your mind, train your body, train your spirit to confront suffering, because we will get on the other side of this. The world may look very different. And from everything I understand, we're probably going to have a new normal. The world's probably going to look very different. But whatever we're going through right now, we will get on the other side. I don't know when it'll happen, but we will. That's just life. We all know the impermanence of life, right? Life and death, the cycle. So we will get on the other side of this. What you do now will shape how you go to the other side of this. So if you use this opportunity to train, to find beauty in suffering, to embrace the struggle, to look for opportunities in the struggle, you will come out of this stronger. You'll come out of this a warrior. As I said, the reason I can face the struggle, because I've trained in it. I've gone through all these things, so I can handle it and smile. So use this the same way, as a training ground to suffer well. Sort of my key mantra in life is suffer well. Suffer well, and life is always going to be beautiful.
Oh, I want to share something. We had my husband has a friend, and he is I don't know how you say in English. He was world master, the world best in kickboxing.
Oh wow! Okay.
And while I'm jogging in the forest alone, I felt like, sometimes, because I love to jog in the evening, I don't know why, when the sun is setting, and I started to experience some fear. And I felt like, what if now nobody's here? If something would happen? And then I was thinking, okay, what I can do to change that. And I didn't have a solution. But then we felt like, okay, let's take some self-defense classes. So he comes over to our place on Monday. I hope he can still do it, because business meetings are still allowed in Germany. So it's a business meeting. And he will train me self-defense. And that it just pops in my mind. I mean, that is also something of to be with that, right? And to put it into action of what you said. And so actually, and it's great, because I never had time to do something like this. And I love to work with, I was very sporty person before I got to India and meditated so long. And sometimes I really miss that. So I started to drive ski again 2 years ago, and drive bicycle, and I want to go in those things, self-defense and jogging. And I think it's also, we can see what kind of opportunity we have having time now. I mean,
absolutely.
If he cannot come over, I think we will do some online classes.
Do virtual, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
So, and that's great, because, I personally, I really think it's very, very important in so many different levels of what you're saying, like looking to the fear and make a best out of it and be with it and don't push it away.
Yeah.
And that is something I see a lot. I mean, I also see that in me sometimes. But I see that we all do that. And I see it also a lot in other people, like this comfort zone is so thick. It's such a nice little thing, this comfort zone. It's very hard to move out of that. Yeah.
No, I love how you turned your fears into action, So like that's a key thing when you have your emotions that you're going through, is turn it into an action. There's a space. They're not defined by that. So release. And I know this this sounds sort of abstract, but it is a concrete action. It's an actionable thing, is like disassociating from that emotion, recognizing there's a space between the emotion and you, and then what do you want to do with it? So Viktor Frankl puts it beautifully. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I think that quote summarizes the essence of like mastery in the human experience, is that there's a space, and the space is even between your emotion. There's a space between your emotion and your response. And what you do in that space is everything. So meditation helps you become aware of that space and helps you become aware there is a space, because many of us are not aware there is a space. So we get angry, we just react, right? We get like we feel anger and we get angry. But there's a space. I can get angry. I can feel anger and not react. I can choose how I want to respond to that anger. So master that space. Use this time to train in that space and do all the things that you didn't have. Again, depending on your situation, write that book you've never wanted to write. Go train at that thing you wanted to do. Like, because we're more connected than ever before, you can do all kinds of stuff. So use this to train. But train your spirit and mind is more than anything in this. Like, if you master, this is because suffering has been handed to us in a way that we did not seek, you can now train to suffer well. And that's like, again, it's not easy to frame it as an opportunity. It's when you're in it, but everything is an opportunity. Like, everything is an opportunity. It depends on what we do with it.
I want to ask you one more thing, Akshay. When you were in the war, I think you also experienced that you cannot really trust the governments, right? And how do you deal with that? I mean, are you not felt used, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah,
you know.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I mean, like, when I was in war as a non-commissioned officer, you have to follow orders. So if your officer tells you to go do X, you have to go do it. And that was hard. There were a lot of times it was like, you know, we weren't exactly stoked about, like, I mean, like, some days we were tired, we wanted to rest, and they would send us on some stupid mission in the middle of the desert, but we had to go do it because you have to follow orders, no questions asked. And separate from even from the politics of the war, like on a big picture, right? Like how we went and all that kind of stuff. So this is, once again, you exercise what you can control. Like, there's elements you just can't control, and what are you going to do about it? You can take control. Like, oh, maybe you choose how you want to engage. Maybe this will be an inspiration to get into politics, right? Like, I don't, you know, if that's what you choose. But there's certain things you can't control, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's just the nature of the beast. You gotta take control of your world to the extent that you can. So I got out of them. I mean, I have no regret. I'm damn proud of being a Marine. I love that experience. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life. But I got out, and I'm choosing now to do other things, you know? So obviously right now, the government, the world around me can impose rules upon me that I have to follow, right? Like, let's say right now in New Jersey, they set a rule that if you step out of your house, cops are going to arrest you. I can't do anything. They don't have that rule, but I'm saying, let's say they were to do that. I can't do anything about that. I just can't. I can voice my, people come together, you can do petitions, all that kind of stuff. You can come together to band together to fight against policies you may not agree with. But you gotta understand what you can control and what you can't.
Because there are some voices who are also concerned about taking away human rights, who are saying, okay, maybe the virus is there, but there are many different ways of seeing things, and there's even the theory. I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, that's also good to say. There's that we don't know. Yeah, we should have open. So it's a very good possibility, and how do you say? It's a good reason to put laws in order which were never there before, and to use the control system. Or in Norway, they have now with your phone, they track you down. If you're more standing with 5 people, they send you an SMS. You are standing right now with more than 5 people. So step back, you're not enough distance. So that's scaring for me. So I also just want to say that it's important, because so many people have fear of wanting not to see anything and have fear of the virus, and just trusting. I just want to say, I feel we should be aware of what laws want to be implemented, what we agree to, that we're not consumed by the fear and forget to look, okay, wait a moment, what might be the higher picture here? And are these laws coming back when the virus is gone, or is this something now we all go in for vaccinations and some special IDs, or what's going on? So, and I think that is also a very important awakening process, no matter what we believe and what the theories are there. But we can only do that if we have no fear to look at those things, and if we don't have fear to also think that possibilities. And maybe you can say something about that, because that would interest me.
Sure. I mean, like on a micro level, as an individual level, and a macro level, moments of great crisis make us rethink things, make us look at things in a different light. So even on a sort of macro level, on policy level, this is going to bring about it's going to reveal the gaps. It's going to point out the struggles, and then we get to decide what we do with that on the other side of it. Now, again, as one individual, how much power do I have on making policies in the U.S. government? Like, this much. Same thing in India, but at the same time, it does it on a micro and a macro level, and then it's up to us to come together to the degree we can to create that. Like in the U.S. now, where it's pointing out gaps potentially about our medical system, it's pointing out gaps about a lot of things, and then after this is done, because again, we'll get on the other side of this eventually, we now get to say, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? And so yes. like anything, it's a micro and a macro level. Suffering it reveals gaps that we have not confronted, even on a personal level. Like now you have to confront things within that you might not have confronted. And there's again, it's not easy when we're in it. It's not always easy when we're in it. And God knows I get that, especially when you're really in it. But there is beauty in it, and there's beauty that can come from it.
So true. And it's hearing from someone who have faced a lot of things that most of the people who would never dare to even try to think about facing. It's really incredible. Yes. So
thank you.
Yeah, if anyone have any more question, Bharati, do you think you have any more question or?
Yeah, I think it's very nice we do this live stream with you, and I'm looking out how the situation will move on, and maybe we can have you back here again in 1 or 2 or 3 months.
An honor.
And and also, I mean, I have the question because we are thinking Holo Vibes is now a nice YouTube channel, and we thought, okay, maybe we can invite some more souls like you to help the people in this time. And do you have maybe 2 or 3 recommendations of you would suggest us to reach out to? Who do you think would fit here and to help people to spread awareness?
Yeah, I'll reach out to you offline, Bharati. I'll think of I'm sure I have many friends who would definitely add a lot of value and share some insights around this. So I'll come up with a few names and send that to you so we can collect. And because I mean, I love what you're doing, because again, it's a reflection of us coming together to I mean, we're in all different corners of the globe. Here we are using technology to come together as one, and people watching, and there's beauty in that, right? So
that's very true.
Yeah.
Yes. So I made a list of the things that you recommended us. I just wanted to, I think, maybe wrap it up with this list of 5 things that actually recommended. I think it's amazing. So what should we do now that we are in this situation? Number 1, put emotions into action. I'm going to put it here, but it didn't come out as I wanted, but put emotions into actions. Write about your emotions and do self-inquiry. Number 2, use this stillness to go within. Go into those spaces that you are running away from. Use this opportunity that there is fewer places to run away and face things. Number 3, spend more time exercising and with your family. Use this opportunity to express love, transmute fear into love. Use this opportunity to serve and connect to people. I think this one is so powerful. We don't have that much opportunity. Like we have, but now there's so much more.
Yeah.
And it's a very good time to do karma yoga.
Absolutely.
And
love that.
Number 5, use this opportunity to train and learn about your mind on how to deal with struggle and embrace struggle and become a warrior. And now to finish with your quote, suffer well. And life is always going to be beautiful. I had some. I was typing fast, so there's some.
There's actually one more quick thing that I would like to add to that is creating rituals and systems, creating systems and rituals to help guide you through this, especially if you're at home. Systematize everything. So systems will help you. It'll help you prevent your mind from, because if you don't, your mind is a chaotic machine. Like the natural state of the mind is chaos. So your mind will control you and chaos will reign supreme. Systems bring order to it. And what I mean by systems is follow rituals. Wake up the same time, morning routines, night routines. I have systems for everything. The breakfast that I eat is the same every single day. The dinner is the same. Lunch, I have some variety, but I wake up and I follow a morning routine. So systematize your life so that when you have systems around the certain areas, you can save your conscious and your physical energy for the things you need, and that way you're not wasting energy in the chaos of the mind. Just one more thing.
I have one more thing I want to add, please. That is an experience I had, and I said to one of the beautiful girls who helped me working in my seminar house, please don't worry. There's some system in Germany. We can put them on short work. And then I said, if you have not enough money in between of that, you tell me, I try to take care, or we try to take care as a team. We have to be open now and work on that. Still, next day, she came very terrific and cried and was very shaky. And I said, didn't you hear me? And it was not reaching her. And I felt, oh my gosh, this is very deep. The fear can get very, very deep, even though I have fear. So you know what I mean? And then I started to get upset. And then I felt, no, I should not get upset. I don't know what she went through before. And I know that her husband is not supporting her with her 2 girls and has a business who crashed completely. So again, I said that to her when she came again back. And then she said, yeah, Bharati, you are so right, because that is just triggering, and now we can go into healing. And that touched me so deep. And she said, thank you for being patient. And I getting just tears saying that, because wow. And I said, thank you for sharing this. And so was new, And so we felt like, because her husband was just not paying the money. He was very rude, and so at least we are very open and putting it together. So she lived 6 months on getting not paid, plus not getting paid for the children, and she lived on selling things on eBay. So now when that happened, that was a huge trigger. So we have to be so kind to people, because we don't know what they went through before.
I love that.
Even they are very rude sometimes, or energy is a little rough. We don't know what they're going through. So that is what I learned also in the last 2 weeks.
Beautiful. Yes. Absolutely.
Opportunity to to build compassion.
Passion. Yes.
So true. When we are in this state of fear, we forget that other people are also
struggling.
We're all going through stuff. We're all going through stuff.
So I think
absolutely.
Remembering this is very powerful.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you very much for your time, for your words, and for your wisdom, and thank you for sharing so much with us and with all our viewers. So I hope we can have you here once again later on. Let's see.
An honor and a pleasure. We'll be connected.
Super. In the meantime, we want to sing a shanty.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I interrupt you.
No. I said, in the meantime, we're just also sending a lot of energy for you, Akshay, too.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We all sending each other energy. That is so amazing.
Just one more thing. For those who are interested in Akshay's book, I'm leaving in the description below for the Amazon link. And also we'll be posting on our Facebook group. So if you want to contact Akshay, also I'm going to leave a link where you can
please feel free.
And his YouTube channel also, we link his YouTube channel too. He started
one thing about the book, just to add, is all the profits go to charity. So we've been supporting many causes, but right now we're directing the money to specific causes related around the coronavirus, looking at the CDC Foundation and stuff like that. So we'll hopefully help that way as well.
And also share with your friends too. So because the more people know about how to deal with fear, I think the better will be the outcome of this experience.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Yeah, much love.
We're chanting Om Shanti together one time, yeah?
Yes.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all, everybody, all over the world as well watching. Thank you.